All right, guys, welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. I am here today. I'm on a little earlier today than I normally am, and it's pretty cool. It's like there's still some sunlight outside, and I've got a wonderful, wonderful guest, Mr. Andi Ewington. How are you today? Tonight for you.
Tonight, great, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy to have you here. How's your day been?
Yeah, not too eventful. It's just been one of those days of chores. So,
Okay.
you get through the working week and then you realise that there's a pile of washing and kids' uniforms, and I'm listening to the fireworks outside at the moment. So,
Oh, nice. What are the fireworks for? What's being celebrated?
it's the 5th of November, which is the bonfire night for us. So it's basically the failed attempt to sort of blow up Parliament.
Hey, there you go. That's cool. I often speak of culture and the differences and this like things that we have in common as well is my favorite thing about talking with people, um, especially from other countries. It's like yes, we speak the same language, but it's like so many differences we have. It's just interesting. I mean, I could go on all day about it.
I mean,
Um,
we've picked up things like your Halloween, but I don't think we embrace it in such gusto and full onness that I'm sort of kind of envious of how well you do it.
So yeah, there's people here in America that take most of. There's people for every holiday that are just like all the way out there with it, especially Halloween.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, funny story. There's there was a story locally like somebody had thought that it was a real body kind of thing. It was so realistic. They're like, hey, somebody's really messed up over here. But like I said, some people take it way too far. I guess they're just having fun, but I
I've seen
digress.
I've seen plenty of videos with sort of like killer clowns that just spring out on people, and then and the dog that gets dressed up as a spider and then gets sort of released upon people, which is great. I hate spiders, so that would
Oh,
scare the bejesus out of me.
well, I don't like spiders. Don't get me wrong, but my wife, she's like absolutely. Like she'll scream, and I think there's really something bad going on. And like there's this little tiny baby spider. I'm like, how dare you get my blood pressure up that high for that little thing?
Yeah.
Um, but we're all
I,
different, which
I don't like them either, so she has my sympathy.
yeah. So, well, I guess we could go back to why we're here, which is very exciting. Tell us about your book, kind of the rendition, what the blurb in your own words, or from the
Of
back,
course.
however you'd like to do it.
Of course. So really, the hero interviews. It's a bit of a departure from the usual sort of sword and sorcery type of books. It's a transcript interviews, a thick tome of basically questions and answers. And I kind of like that as a format. I did it before on a superhero book, actually, many moons ago, called 45, and did 45 interviews. So this is like a spiritual successor, because you'll find that there's 45 interviews within a world of fantasy and sort of trying to disrupt the normal tropes that you sort of associate with bards and dragons and whatnot. But there is a sort of a thread of a story that's sort of woven through all the different sort of interviews. So in a very quick nutshell, it's sort of The Incredibles meets Lord of the Rings.
That's awesome. So it's very different in a good way. When I first got it, I read a little bit before I actually started reading into it further, and it reads a lot differently than anything else I'd ever seen. What was trying to think of the words like how? What made you want to write it this way rather than the normal prose that you see in most fantasy books? What was your inspiration behind it?
So when I first wrote 45, which obviously is the superhero version of this book, really, I was sort of reading the book World War Z by Max Brooks. And I absolutely loved the way that Max had sort of just done these sort of transcript accounts. And I'd read a lot of sort of Vietnam, sort of World War II firsthand sort of accounts, which are obviously very harrowing, but give you so much information. They're so rich in sort of like first person, really being their sort of take on things. And I kind of I'm drawn to that. I mean, as a day job, I'm writing computer games, so a lot of my writing is pretty much all dialogue. Characters talking to each other. So for me, it kind of felt like a natural sort of move into sort of saying, right, okay, well, look, maybe we can turn this into a book,
I love that.
and do something different.
And that's something that I learned about you when I was actually doing some research about this interview. I did not know that about you, that you write games and comics, and that you had your debut comic, if I remember correctly, which was, what was your debut comic?
That was 45. So
okay, so the same one we've been talking.
Yeah, so that was my very first sort of comic, and then I wrote that back in 2012, and then from that I wrote, or sort of done a couple of little indie sort of comics left and sort of on the side. But I then got to work on Just Cause 3, Dark
Yeah.
Souls 2, and then I worked on Vikings and did one of those comics. So it was really cool. I really sort of enjoyed sort of my time in the comic industry. In a sort of a strange way, I sort of moved out of it purely because of work, really. The sort of the conflict of interest. Work wanted me to spend a lot of time writing dialogue. They didn't want me to spend so much time, working on comic work. So the comics kind of went to the side, but I still had a big passion for writing. So I sort of did a bit of book work in the background.
Yeah, I think the comic that stuck out the furthest to me, because I'm a Elden Ring fan, and Dark Souls. I mean, I never played Dark Souls a whole lot before I discovered Elden Ring, but excuse me. I love that whole the visual that it gives. It's just old and like worn, and it's just kind of dark. I love it.
Very bleak. It's a very bleak game. And you have that. It's actually funny working on that comic, because I was FromSoft, who were the developers at the time, still are, but they didn't give me any information on the game. So I was pretty much had to write a script, not knowing really what was going to go in the game, and just had little drops of, okay, I know that it's, I played Dark Souls, I know it's about going to campfires and redeeming the soul, a damn soul and everything. So we kind of, Rob Williams, who's another writer, worked with me on it, and Rob is like a big time writer in the comic industry. He's done tons of stuff. So we worked on it together, and we were just making shit up. Sorry, I swore there, but
you can say anything you want, brother.
So we were just doing it on the fly, and we were lucky to get it sort of, we sent it off to FromSoft, and they were like, yeah, that's okay, that's fine. It doesn't, because it was ahead of the game. It couldn't give away too much. And we had Simon Colby working on it as well, who's a great artist. And we did a whole sort of black and white take on the comic. And then when we released it, the fans started coloring it in themselves and then reposted it. So it was brilliant. It was a nice engagement for us. But no, I don't draw. I'm absolutely, well, I used to be good at drawing, but
writing's your thing now.
Writing's my thing now. Yeah, I much prefer.
What does your day-to-day look like then? If that's your day-to-day like job, what does that look like for you?
See, it's slightly changed because I'm a game director now, so I'm sort of in charge of a title and making sure the vision of that title is delivered upon. And I have the vision, so it's like I corral all the different sort of disciplines now. So I'm actually talking to narrative in order to get them to sort of write whatever I need them to write. So it's a real sort of step back, in as much that I used to be really in the front lines of writing, and we're doing all the story arcs, we're coming up with all the different branching opportunities, we're putting in hooks for the game level designers and game designers to sort of decide where parts of the game could go off in different tangents. So that's really, really fun. When you're the game director, you sort of take a step back from that, and you're kind of pointing to different people saying, okay, can you do this? Can you write those branches and come up with the ideas? And then you go to the engineer and you say, okay, can you put hooks in for everything? And then you sort of talking to the art team to sort of say, right, okay, we need, this is the art vision, we need this pulled in. So you sort of end up being this sort of conductor, rather than actually playing any instrument yourself, which is a strange position to be in, especially for somebody like me. I love writing, so you know, it takes a bit of getting used to sort of not throw yourself in, because sometimes, you know, because I did graphic design for like 30 years, I would literally, you know, get something, Photoshop it up myself and say, this is what I want. And you're kind of not allowed to do that. It gets frowned upon if you start literally trying to do somebody else's job for them. So you just have to sort of direct these days. So yeah, it's a difficult job, definitely.
It sounds like the person, so the job that you have now, it kind of seems like you had to go through the trials that you did and have the jobs that you did prior to really understand how to do the job you have now and make sure the people that you're telling or directing are accomplishing those goals, and kind of had to have some experience with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're still learning. You know, I was in sort of the Unreal Engine, sort of playing around and looking at stuff, and I've got no programming skills whatsoever. And then I look at the engineers and they're all in there coding and everything. I haven't got a chance. You just try and do as much as you can, really, and pick things up and go, okay, you know, I'll remember that for later if, you know, I get asked about a certain question, and you start picking up buzzwords and you start throwing buzzwords around and you start trying to, okay, I think I know what I'm talking about now. But it takes time.
Oh, I'm sure. It sounds really cool. Just from I love playing video games, and I think I'm probably in the majority where I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Like, I could guess and probably be 90% wrong. But when you know the meat and potatoes, I guess that you could say, behind games, that's probably something I would be interested in looking more into.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a definitely, I mean, you know, we're talking books. We should be talking books, but you know, I would say certainly being able to write and take that skill set into the day job to become a narrative writer was an amazing experience, and something that I can honestly say, if you're writing, you know, if you're a writer and you've got aspirations to try and make a career, because Lord knows making money as an author is really, really hard. That, you know, there are outlets for that, and I found that I was really, really lucky to be able to get you know, writing gigs just in an industry that I absolutely love.
So that was your stepping stone, which is kind of like, you know, why we started talking about it. You know, you've had these previous jobs that have helped you become who you are and bleed into this book, The Hero Interviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wonderful. I love that.
So sorry, one of your viewers have just asked, is the Hero Interviews a comic book?
Yep. I was gonna. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's a huge 195,000 word tome that will.
That bad boy is thick.
That will do a lot of damage.
Yeah. No, but look at the cover, guys. It's stinking beautiful. Yeah. I've never seen another cover like that. I haven't, not ever.
So I sort of looked around and actually went to a comic book artist, Connor Nolan, who is a fantastic artist and does some brilliant sort of comedic illustrations. And I just wanted something, because it's a smorgasbord of stories, really. I wanted something on the front that just had little Easter eggs for all the different interviews, because that's the type of book this is. I mean, if you read it and you go, okay, well, it's one interview, after 10 pages that interview is done and the character moves on to the next interview, and that kind of repeats itself 45 times, and you think to yourself, you know, there's not much going on. But actually there's arcs within arcs. The way that I've written it, I've tried to do one big arc for the main character, But within that, as you're going through it, what I hoped that people would see is that they'd go, hang on a sec, in interview 4, this was mentioned. And then you go back to interview 4 and do a little bit of detective work and actually start cross-referencing stuff, and realize that there's a lot of interconnecting threads all over the place, that if you spend a bit of time actually in it, and I appreciate it's a big tome and it probably would put a lot of people off just because of the sheer size of it, but there is a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, but this is a world I'm into, world building, hence the day job. So
I've always said that if there's like between a skinny book and a really big book, thick book, I'm choosing the thick one every single time. I don't know why, but
well, it can stop a bullet,
that,
small bullet.
and I think there's just more to love. It's just there's more about it than like I'm a fantasy lover, so you get more of an impression of the world, the characters, dialogue, lore, history, all that fun stuff. So I think that's probably why I go for the bigger ones.
And that's actually part of the footnotes. That's where the footnotes come into it.
That'll be a question we get to super soon. I'm anxious to ask that one. But first, what are some a subgenre or a couple that you think this book falls into?
I mean, I really love Discworld. Terry Pratchett. I grew up watching lots of comedy. Probably comedy that maybe not translate as well across the pond. But I would say that certainly fantasy comedy, is where this really sits. It's a breezy toilet book. You could sit, read a few pages, put it down, and not actually worry that you maybe haven't, picked it up for a couple of days, because each story, each little interview is self-contained. So, you kind of can take your time with it and not have to worry too much, and dip back into it. So certainly the comedy is where I would say sit after the fantasy.
That's such an attractive quality too, and I'm glad you covered that, because that's the way I had seen it too. A lot of times if you go halfway through or like a quarter of the way through a typical fantasy book, and you set that thing down for a month or two, you're probably gonna have to reread a lot of it, because it gets pretty specific and there's lots of build up, and you gotta have to remember that. And I like what you said. You can it's a toilet book, like you said. You can sit. Read a couple stories at a time, or even just one, and come back to it later, and you're not going to absolutely ruin the experience.
No, absolutely. And it is designed to be absorbed in small bites. If somebody sits down and wants to read, I've seen sometimes the Kindle Unlimited, and somebody's read like 700 pages, and I'm going, whoa, 700 pages is a lot that they've read. But if you want to read just a little bit on the train, and then you kind of don't feel that when you pick it up again that you're totally lost as to where the story is, and some of the more epic books, as great as they are, it does go, hang on a sec, where were they? What were they doing? What mission were they on? Where are they again? Who's with them? Who's betrayed them? There's not a lot of that going on, because you just sort of you're trying to just keep it all in a sort of a sizable, manageable, on-the-go chunks. It's sort of like the mobile reading.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. Book Mama 87 says, perfect for busy people in this busy world.
Absolutely.
I think that if somebody says, hey, I don't have a lot of time to read, what would you recommend? Boom, that's an easy one now. It's like, well, I know a guy.
If you like your comedy, I will stipulate, it's really hard to write fantasy comedy. So Terry Pratchett done it really, really well. He is sort of like the epitome of where you want to be with fantasy, and you can get really sort of you can get shot down really quickly if your comedy isn't sharp. There are a lot of jokes, and there are a lot of throwaway jokes. I would say that majority of the jokes land. I like to think the majority of the jokes land, but humor is quite subjective. So some people will go, No, whereas I've always enjoyed writing comedy.
Sure. So Terry Pratchett then is the guy that was just like that inspired you the most to write comedy. I haven't read what I can't think of the name of that series that he writes. Something World. This World. Yeah, Discworld. And I've heard that that is just such a fun and fantastic series to read, and I just keep hearing more and more about it.
I heartily recommend it. It's he was very sort of conscious of social commentary. So writing and having a sort of a take on today's world is a really great way to start comedy. And through your humor you can draw parallels and do pastiches and sort of make a statement on today's world. And he done that to perfection. And I'd like to think that in the hero interviews, because I do reference, there's a lot of contemporary references, things like Twitter and things like that are lampooned in the hero interviews. There's a lot of movie references in the hero interviews. I referenced the Terminator, I referenced Aliens, I referenced A Few Good Men, I've referenced the Predator. There are a lot of I love my movies, and I love dropping little Easter eggs in that you go, hang on a sec.
I think I know that from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's even a comment on there about a wizard on the coast, and the fact that somewhere in the world that I've created, some arcane copyright sort of wizards start getting a little bit nervous when anybody mentions a wizard of the coast. Because obviously wizards of the coast. So there's lots of little nudges and little things that I just try and sort of take it to the edge before getting sued.
Well, no, that's funny. Before getting sued, I love that there's going to be not one theme. There's going to be this movie, maybe this movie. But I did miss a question up here. It says, "Is it a darker read? Is there maybe some dark humor?"
Definitely dark humor. There's occasional, I wouldn't say toilet humor. A little bit, we've got things like turd lurkers, which sort of, different. And I reference poo sometimes, but in a sort of a comedic way,
Without that, how can you have something that's truly comedic?
Yeah, exactly. You've got to go sometimes to the base level of that.
Sure.
There's a little bit of drug reference, but only because of bards and. I've done one of my characters is a bit of a Keith Richards homage. So it's I wouldn't say dark in as it plays around with tropes. What I love doing is subverting tropes. So when I do my writing, I take something, I go, well, look, maybe we write about a bard. Okay, bards are done to death. Okay, well, maybe this was a barbarian that turned up for the barbarian interview, but ended up at the wrong interview and ended up being a bard. And now he's got a guitar that he swings around like a club, and he's still trying to, they're just ways that you can sort of like take something and go, okay, how can I turn this on my
and see, so that's
head?
Something I could never think up myself. So I think it takes somebody really special to make really anything funny. There's just a way to do that. Not everybody can be funny. There's actual techniques in that. And it sounds like you've got the right tools to do so. And I can't wait to get farther and realize more of this, because it's good so far. I really, really like it.
I appreciate that. I don't think my kids find me funny, but dad jokes and everything, they just seem to roll their eyes. But hey,
I think that's a commonality with dads and kids, right? They're like, Dad, you're just lame. And even if you are funny, I'm not going to laugh because, you're my dad.
Exactly. It's totally uncool.
Let's see. So go read books. Matt, he says, I haven't read any fantasy comedy yet, but it sounds like a good time. It is. It's fun. And he's really Andy's really talking about it in a way that seems very like a personal, something personal to you, something that you're very passionate about. You know, you talk about Terry Pratchett. Um, so
Well,
I actually can't. Go
I
ahead.
grew up on I grew up playing and sort of reading a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of choose your own adventure books, fighting fantasy books. So I've spent a lot of my life in the fantasy genre, sort of absorbing lots of the choose your own adventure things. So I kind of feel that, yeah, if you're gonna sort of throw yourself into a fantasy comedy, if it's not Terry Pratchett, then have a go at this.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I
if you
love
like
that.
Terry Pratchett and you like Douglas Adams and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which was another inspiration,
Okay.
which is where the footnotes come from, by
Oh,
the way.
that's our next question. So if you want to dive into that at the bottom, just to give the viewers a little bit of understanding what we're every page. I'm pretty sure every single page, if you can see, there's footnotes. And if you'll kind of just dive into that.
Yeah, so the footnotes really is the main character's sort of take on what he's hearing, experiencing. So it tends to be the inner monologue. So it's a book within a book, because all of those inner monologues are basically there is there are small, tiny little arcs going on, and there's lots of different references, and a lot of the time, he is just generally going, this guy's an idiot. But as you go through, you actually start to realize that, there's lots of history, lots of things that he knows about, because he's a law master at the end of the day. That if we sort of roll back a little bit, this story is about a law master who is looking for his brother. His brother's gone missing. In a world of heroes, he's not a hero. And basically, he goes around interviewing a load of heroes, trying to find out what it's like to be a hero. I mean, he comes from a family of heroes. But he's trying to find out what happened to his missing brother, and so the footnotes are a fantastic way to, one, get lore, two, add in jokes that don't quite fit with how the narrative is working, the dialogue, the back and forths are going, and sort of also gives me chance to sometimes do a long running joke. Sometimes there's a joke that runs across about 5 different footnotes that will span across the book.
Oh wow.
So there's like one about his uncle, that you end up finding out that his uncle, what happened to his uncle through the footnotes, and that's it. So it gives me an opportunity when I hopefully would. I'm currently working on a second book. I can go back and start tapping into those footnotes. There's about 1,700 footnotes. There's a lot of footnotes.
Yeah, the more you speak about your book in the way that you've written it and your inspirations, you've got a lot going on. It's like I don't think I could ever. My brain doesn't work that well. It's kind of like half going at the best moment. So you've got this Easter eggs that you plant. You've got this going dialogue at the bottom with their own jokes involved. It's like that sounds amazing to enjoy, but to create that, it's like, oh, I'm not the guy. So I'm glad you are, though, because we need
It
that kind of stuff.
it was it certainly was a challenge. I would say that I may not do as many footnotes in follow-up books. 1,700 footnotes is a lot, even by
Ooh.
Terry Pratchett standards. So, and to format all of that for Kindle Unlimited and make sure that every single footnote actually is on the right page.
Oh my gosh.
I had to go through. Fortunately, I'm a graphic designer, so I could set it, and I'd go back into Kindle and going back into Amazon and basically just go, poof, is that right? No, that's not on the right page. Go back, reformat. And things like that don't tend to feel like a chore to me. But
Well, that's good.
there were points that I was almost crying. It took about 2 or 3 months just to do the formatting on that, which was
Wow.
just
Tedious.
I should have done a shorter book. That's all I should say.
So going to 1 second here. That's right. You did mention your illustrator is, hold on 1 second. His name Connor Nolan.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a job in that process, or were you a part of the process and coming up with the look of the cover?
So the way that I, I've the day job when I was a graphic designer would be that I would talk to artists. I'd find artists, I'd talk to artists, I'd brief artists, and then we would work together to go through the sketches that would come back. And then from the sketches, I would choose a direction, make any amends, and then go, right, that's the one, go for it. And it's a similar process with Connor. Connor's an absolute diamond and a really good, an amazing artist. And so I sort of trusted where he was going with it. I gave him the overview. I said, look, here's like 30 different interviews. Here's the sort of very brief summary, because he needed context. And to write, you need to illustrate rather, you need to know what's going on. What characters am I dealing with here? What sort of things are in the world in order to illustrate something? A lot of book covers today generally capture one scene, whereas the book cover that I've got is pretty much everything in the kitchen sink thrown in with a wraparound cover.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything like incorporated.
So the way that I did it was I literally broke down each interview and said, okay, here's a small little synopsis. For argument's sake, at the bottom there's a sort of a mime artist on the cover. So I literally would say, right, okay, we've got a mime artist that's a mime warrior that looks like a mime artist, waves an imaginary sword, but thinks that they're a proper warrior, and goes off on quests with invisible swords and stuff like that. So yeah, it was literally writing up little things that Connor could hang off of, and I didn't want to give him any other direction. So everything is all his.
That's awesome. Book Mama says, I was going to ask, did he read your book? I always wonder if illustrators do that. Like, I think they try to get the best image in their head of what they're going to illustrate, but at the same time they're really busy, so kind of giving them a synopsis as you did seemed really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some artists will read the context of what they're writing about. Some artists would just don't have time, and you've got to do the legwork for them. When I wrote before I wrote the hero interviews, I wrote Campaigns and Companions, which was an illustrated book about cats and dogs playing Dungeons and Dragons. So I've done a whole load of tweets that went viral, and then I worked with an artist, and the artist has done some amazing pieces. The book is actually over there, but if you bear with me, I'll show you I'll quickly show you.
Yeah, please do. And I'll take this moment to thank everybody who's kind of showed up. We've got Go Read Books with Matt, and we've got John Douglas, of course. Hail John Douglas. We've got a lot of other people. Tim McKay, he kind of showed up. He is in the building. Tim is, and Soul Free Wolf. I have to learn your name, Soul Free Wolf, because you're often here, and I'd like to say hello with your name. That's a respect thing. And Caden Love is also here, so thank you. Back to you, Andy.
So I wrote a load of books, load of things for Campaigns and Companions, which was illustrated by Callum Alexander Watts, and I co-wrote this with Rihanna Pratchett. So Terry Pratchett's daughter.
So cool.
So it's all just little dialogues, and you got like the dog, and he's like going, the cat saying, "I'm going to sort of cast a fire," and he goes, "Ball!" and jumps after it. It's all sort of little comedic illustrations, but Callum is an amazing artist. He's done all these things about cats, bringing back, things through the cat flap that are obviously
that
way
looks
too
so
big.
fun.
So it's only a fun little thing, and we done it as a little. I got Rihanna involved because I knew that she would absolutely love this, because this is the street. This is the cat, being told that they're going to be getting this award from this fairy, and then she says, "I eat the fairy." It's lots of little fun little things. So I always enjoy it.
How was that working with one of your inspirations' daughter?
Brilliant. Rihanna is a fantastic writer in her own right, and you know, it's amazing to be anywhere close to, you know, somebody that you know, that her father was such an inspiration for me. But you know, to have her now and as a friend, and you know, we
Wow.
we we chat and everything, and you know, she's really well known within the games industry. Worked on Tomb Raider and Mirror's Edge, I think. You know, she's a really great person to have sort of beside you, encouraging you to keep on writing.
So yeah, Yale Montague, he kind of went for it first, and then Caden Love also followed up on it. They want to know what's going on with the bookshelf because they see some lovely titles. So let's see what you've got, man. I'd love to see.
Yeah, I collect board games. So
Wow.
this is the very small version. There's another sort of section over on the other side, and then there's a 3 cupboards full
Wow.
elsewhere. But yeah, I collect and play lots of different board games.
That's
So
awesome.
I've got the new Hero Quest somewhere. That's in the other thing. Nemesis is great. I love that. Unmatched. I love the actual art style because it's all done by the guys that did the Mondo posters. Do you remember Mondo posters? Do you ever see
No,
them?
so I came to the kind of fantasy genre when I was 29. I'm 33, so I haven't been here long, but I'd love to know about it.
So Mondo, they do all sort of alternate film posters. So if you sort of type in, you know, I don't know, Star Wars alternate film poster. So rather than seeing the authentic film poster, you'll see a lot of really fantastic artists, which is where you can get book artists from. You know, and you know, I've worked with some of these guys before in the past on in my days as a designer, and I collect film posters as well. It's just a thing I do. So Mondo released, or with Mondo Restoration Games, who are a big sort of retro games company, they basically teamed up with all the different artists to create this sort of card battler type game with a little board and everything. And I collect them because I absolutely love the artwork. I would start pulling this, but I think for comedic effect, you will just see a cascade of board games and everything because it's just literally
Yeah,
held
it
together.
looks like you've planned every little one you've put in there.
I've tried. I have tried. But
It's
Mansions of Madness is awesome as well. So I saw somebody's.
Yeah, Caden said Mansions of Madness.
Yeah,
And
it's really
then
good story
Rick
stuff in there.
said he is a Hero Quest was one of my go-tos when I was way younger. I had it when it first came out. I hate that I didn't get back into that when I was younger. I had some friends that did. I played a lot of sports and I never had any time to do that kind of thing. But like I want to now, but now's not the time either because I have 4 children, one being a newborn. So what I'm doing here takes up time that I do have.
What happens is, and this is I will say that I would say I've probably played everything maybe once, some not at all. You know, I've got 2 kids myself, and nostalgia is a really dangerous thing because you know
Oh yeah.
I've gone back into my MERP stuff. I used to do lots of Dungeons and Dragons and MERP, so I've got like lots of things like this is worth hundreds.
Wow.
This was a sort of an unofficial module for Middle Earth. So I've got lots and lots of modules, Brie and things like that. So
That's really
they're all.
cool.
I collect them, and I will one day do something with them and maybe play them and whatnots. But at the moment, they're just sort of. I just like the idea of collecting them and getting them and
No, I
owning them.
totally get it. Books is like the thing where it's like I could buy a book every time I go anywhere books are sold and get a new book. And I certainly have no need for, any extra books. I have lots of books to read. So I get it. I really do. It's just like, I don't know, it's a nostalgia thing, like you said. And on top of that, it's just fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a lot older than you. I would say. What are you? You're in your young 20s there.
Oh, yeah. No, 33. I'm 33.
So, you know, I'm hitting 51, almost 52. And so I've gone back and collected a load of the stuff. See, I had all of the original Star Wars Kenner toys when they first came out, and my mum sold them off me. I literally
Uh-oh.
had AT-ATs, ATSTs, I had the Millennium Falcon,
Oh my goodness.
and my mum sold it for all of it for 20 quid. So
Oh.
yeah, I know. That's just it. Just bless her
It's like,
soul.
oh man.
Yeah, it's always the thing that I sort of like go, she sold it to 20 quid. And back then 20 quid was a lot of money, but nowhere near what
Nowhere
all of
near what it was worth, right?
no, exactly. So
Tori, I just want to say, Tori Tekken, she just popped in from Tori Talks. Wonderful booktube. Thank you for stopping in. Yes, you should absolutely check his book out. You should also check the beginning of this out. He talks a lot about it, his inspiration and writing it. So it's a lot of fun. Thank you for popping in here.
Cheers, thank you. So yeah, I've got a load of really old retro games as well that from the 80s, and I've collected loads of books as well. So a lot of the choose your own adventure books that were they're probably worth about £100 now, trying to get hold of them, and I've spent a little bit of money trying to basically recapture my youth. With a lot of things like the Way of the Tiger, which was done by I think it's Jamie Thompson, and a lot of the Lone Wolf books and things like that. They're a fantastic sort of, if you ever wanted a sort of a gateway book into fantasy for kids.
Yes, please tell me.
Those fighting fantasy books are choose your own adventure books, where you literally are reading and making choices in the same way that a lot of computer games make branching narrative stories. These are great ways to sort of enjoy a book and go, actually, I've now got to go left or go right, and then you read the passage and you carry on. They're fantastic for kids. I think
that's
it really,
awesome.
Really encourages them to read. And I spent a lot of my youth, playing computer games, but reading these books, which I've gone back to collecting because I love them so much.
I'm always searching for those little tidbits about getting your kid, because I didn't get that as a kid. My mom and dad didn't really read, but I wish that I would have found literature a little younger. Just kind of imagining where my imagination would be now. But I want to do that with my kids. So anytime I hear little tidbits about recommendations and how to get them entered into using their imagination, that's wonderful. Are you the type that has a set writing process, or are you a little more relaxed with your process?
I think I used to be a little bit more set. I mean, the way that I used to work would be that my commuting to my day job would be my writing time, and I would have like an hour on the train. So I would literally go, right, get the same seat every day. I tried to, and then I'd get my laptop out. I would write for an hour until I reached London, go to work, and then when I came home, I'd get a seat, try to, and then sit and write for another hour on the way home. And that was a fantastic time because that was like 2 hours where I was captured and I couldn't do anything. I can scroll and look at my phone and maybe not do much, but actually making time for 2 hours a day to write, I was prolific at that point.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of finding a job that was a little bit more local, and now my commute is like 30 minutes. And so I find that it's really harder now. I'm fits and spurts. I'd get into it. I'd just start getting into the good bit of the story again. I'm starting to find my groove, and then I've got to get off the train.
You got to get off the train.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for the hero interviews, it was just dedication. It was literally, okay, I'm going to write on the train. I'm going to write when I get home. I exist, but I'm not really going to see people.
Sure.
But then after that, it's like inviting beta readers. I had a fantastic beta reader in Erica Marks, who got in touch. And she's become a great friend, and she's a godsend. I put a little thanks in there, and some other people that have sort of helped out, Lisa as well, and my editor Paul. They all helped and carried the load a little bit because writing is a lonely process, and it's fantastic to be able to lean on people a little bit that can sort of pull you through to the end and say, no, it's good, keep going, and you kind of need that, because there's some days you'd sort of look at it and go, this is just a pile of pants.
Yes.
You know, is anybody ever going to read this?
Do you
Especially after.
find that reading out loud helps you catch grammatical errors or maybe errors in the way that the story's going?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that you have to do. It kind of helps that I have written something that is predominantly dialogue based, so you know it kind of lends itself to audio, an expression. And in fact, I did a couple of audio recordings, which I think I sent to you, which you know,
Yes. Now that yes, you did.
so you know, those were great sort of little samples that I did to sort of try and prove the proof of concept, really, that you know
Yes.
this would sound really fantastic as a radio play and a drama if somebody came in for it. I'm still
Yeah.
waiting. You know, one day.
No, I believe in it. I often, and this is what I go by too. I just started writing myself, and I really enjoy it. But the thing is, like you said, it's like finding that time because it can't be divided time. It has to be undivided. Uh,
I
you could
think
have. No, go ahead.
I gotta say you got to just keep going. I think you just got to find a little bit of put a little bit of time a day and say this is me. You know, I know there's other things going on in the house, but this has to be me. Um, and even if you only write one page, it's one page. It's one page more in
Sure.
the journey.
I love that because not everybody. You hear of these writing processes where it's like, okay, 2,000 words a day, which is very ambitious. Um, or there's other ones I've heard. One, I think one that I really want to try out. I don't remember the name of the process, but it's like work for 35 minutes and then you take a 10-minute break. But when you're writing, no cell phones, no nothing. You just strictly 100% attention on what you're working on.
Yeah, I think get some music as well, some nice ambient music in the background that sort of evokes the scenes that you're trying to write. That really
that's
helps.
it. Pomodoro. That's it. The Pomodoro method. That's what it was called. Timothy Wolf. Sorry, I just messed up the question there. Here we go. I totally agree. It really adds quickly if you do it every day. It's something, right? It makes perfect sense. If even if you write just one page a day, you're going to eventually. It's better than nothing because that doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've just got to see it as it's a long race, it's a marathon, and it's not a sprint. And definitely don't sprint the end because it's really tempting in the last couple of pages to really write fast and get to the end. It's because you can see the end, but take your time with it. Because I did that. I sprinted, and then when I gave it to Erica to read, she was like, it was good. I think the ending, you've missed something. And I was like, damn it, you're right. So I went back and had to rewrite the ending, and the ending was like, okay, yeah, you've nailed it now. I'm happier with that. But it's really tempting when you see the finishing line to sprint for it. But I think you've still got to go right. Okay, no, I know it's 2 pages away, but I'm not going to run to get to those 2 pages because I could really cock up the whole book.
That makes perfect sense. It does. I haven't been in that stage yet, but thinking about being there, I could just imagine how. Oh, I want to, I'm excited. I want to get this done. And then it'll be the end of me, like kind of freaking out and be putting all the stress on myself, but still make sure you're doing the process the right way, the way that you feel is your process. I love that. Are you currently reading anything right now?
Am I currently reading? I am taking a bit of a break. I've done a lot of writing, and the day job is also taking some sort of fair amount of the strain as well. So a lot of my time is actually spent just tweeting funny cat and dog jokes. So that tends to be what my day is. I'm also writing, funny enough, with Erica, the sequel, the unofficial sequel to this book. So it sort of carries on a little bit. So that project is also sort of on the go, but I'm not actually reading anything at the moment. I find that when I'm in the midst of writing, it's really hard to suddenly just pull yourself out and just go, I'm going to start reading something now.
Okay.
because I'm all my thinking, even if I'm not doing anything, I'm not actually writing, I'm still thinking about it. And if I'm thinking about it, I don't really want distractions of other stories sort of pouring into the
Yeah,
psyche.
that makes
Um, so I,
perfect sense.
so I tend to sort of distill myself and go, right, I'm reading nothing. What I am doing is playing quite a lot of Cyberpunk at the moment, which has had an update and it's got a fantastic story. And I absorb narratives that way. Through a lot of the computer games, because they're just
Sure.
as equally engaging and have some fantastic little threads and things. Plus, I'm making my own stories, so you don't have to follow the whatever has been laid out. I'm a little bit of a rebel, and I'd like to go my own way sometimes. So, I sometimes go to the back of a book and go, okay, well, how does this end? Because I just like, I just want to know, and then I can work my way to it. Because sometimes I want to sort of do the Columbo thing, and go, right, okay, I want to know who the killer is, and then I want to work out how he
Oh
did it.
wow, I could never do that. Like I'm super into the surprise or twists or anything. I think that for me, I would never be interested. But I've heard that before. Um, so other than like the comedic fantasy, do you have like an epic fantasy author or a high fantasy author that you really enjoy?
Um, See, it's really hard. I spent a lot of time um, reading a lot of Terry Pratchett. So there isn't a huge amount of high fantasy that I've read. Obviously Tolkien, but Tolkien is chunky as hell. Trying to
Yeah.
read through that, in contemporary ways, I'm actually reading a little bit of Nate Crowley, which is Notes from Small Planets, which is really funny, sort of a travel guide around the universe with a little bit of fantasy. But it's not. I wouldn't call it an epic fantasy. It's more like a travel guide
Okay.
done in a comedic way. When there are some amazing artists, writers out there, um, for like the Crew with Samir,
Hmm.
um, and G.R. Matthews and Jeffrey Sprate.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Jeff Spite. Yeah, I like him a
yeah.
lot. He's got
So
what was that he wrote? I've got The Paladin
Paladin
Unbound.
Unbound. Yeah.
So
So
fun.
yeah. So I've got them to read, and it's just finding time because I've spent literally 3 years, 2 or 3 years writing the hero interviews and getting it sorted.
I'm sure.
So it takes a long time. So what is the red thing between the disc drawers and the white books under the green? That
Behind
thing.
you.
These.
Yeah, look, the red thing you're pointing at. Yeah.
These are. I can't remember the artist. I really like them. There was this artist I found that did these dog drawings, and it's like a little.
Oh, they
They're
did
two.
look like lungs, and they did for a second. Now they don't.
Yeah, they're two little dogs that sort of like connect together like that. But they're off a series of life of me, I can't think of the artist. But they're sort of little models of that artist's work. I think I've got a blue dog version somewhere. It's just like in this style, which is quite cool.
You're a man of many interests and different hats. I like that. That's fun because a lot of the times I get inspiration to kind of check those types of things out. Especially one of the biggest things that I can't wait to. I told you was games like the board games.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons and that. I'm sure there's so many more of those type games that I just don't know about, but they just seem really fun. I don't have even close to the amount of time at the moment, but I think that maybe one day with my sons, I've got 3 boys and 1 girl. I think that would be a really fun. Can D&D be a family thing?
Yeah, absolutely. My son reached out and said, "Look, Dad, can we play Dungeons and Dragons?" And I was like, "Whoa, yeah, let's do this." I haven't DM'd in years, so I kind of was like, I want to do this. This is really cool. My son, he's 14. I've got tears in my eyes. He's asking me to DM for him, and my daughter isn't interested at all in anything like that. Though she does play things like Mysterium, which is a
Oh, that's
fantastic board
awesome.
game. So she will play some of the board game stuff, but she's got no interest in D&D. But it's not to say that your daughter won't take an interest. I would really
Sure.
hope that they all do, because it's fantastic world building. It's great for the imagination.
She's 5
problem
weeks
solving.
old, so she can't tell me yet.
Roll her up a character. You've got to
Right.
get the D&D first level sort of baby top all in one. It's got like a little character sheet that says like
Oh wow.
strength 1, intelligence 1, charisma 18, which I think is brilliant. So
Yeah.
that's definitely what you got to do. And I do a little bit of home brewing. So what I do is I tend to play MERP critical tables. If you've never played MERP, a Middle Earth role playing, I used to play MERP more than I used to play D&D, purely because MERP had these brilliant critical tables. So rather than just doing 6 damage, 12 damage, they had a whole narrative table based upon the hit. And you rolled dice, and if you had a bonus dice, you then go beyond 100 into these heavy criticals. And the heavy criticals would have a little description that said, shot through brain now mush, try a spatula.
Wow.
We would just roll about laughing because it would add a layer of narrative to what the battle was going on. And then
That
as a
sounds
DM,
incredible.
you would go, right, the arrow's gone into his head and his head's exploded. And you'd just go, brilliant, and that's all we wanted as kids. We just wanted the gore, and MERP was a perfect way with their critical tables to give you that gore without actually having to think about it.
So one of the things that I want to make sure I do with every author I speak with is your links and where we can get your book. So could you go over the links in which you are most active, or all? It doesn't. I want all the ones that you want to give me, and then where your books can be found.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on Twitter as at Andi Ewington.
Okay. Yeah, just name like Twitter and this, because I'll grab that all. You don't have to name all.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I'm on Twitter mainly. That's generally where I am, and the book is on Amazon, so you'll be able to buy there. But actually, you can get it if you don't want to go through Amazon. Going to Barnes and Noble or any of your local bookstores, they should hold the book on their records, and you'll be able to order it. It'll still go through Amazon. It'll take you 6 weeks longer, but if you want to go and support them, you can still do that.
Awesome. So what's next for you?
So I am currently toying with 2 different books. One called Dead World. I wrote a film script a little while back that got picked up and sadly got given back to me after like 7 years, which was about a cop in a that died, and he could body jack his partner to sort of solve crimes.
Oh wow!
He basically, victims would come to him in Dead World, and he would then go into the real world to try and solve it. But while he's not in his partner's body, his partner is trying to solve his murder of the partner. So if he solves that, his partner moves on. So he keeps on going back and fucking up his own case because he doesn't want it to be solved.
That's awesome.
So there's that is total departure from comedy. Or there's the Hero Diaries, which would be a sort of Adrian Mole calendar, diary entries of that dips into the hero interviews and uses the same world. So that's the 2 books that I've currently written. Dead World is written in as much as it's a film script already and is ready to rock and roll. So I can just go back into it and convert it into a book. So I'm probably going to toy with that first.
That's really exciting. So just kind of recap, guys. I will have all of Andi's links down in the description. And lastly, we've got what what to look forward to from you. Sorry. Really, I just wanted to thank you again for being here, and for the people who came to watch. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, so much. I have such a different insight into reading your book now than I did before, which is why I do this. It's so much fun. I'm very lucky to be able to speak with the people in which I read. it just gives it a whole nother layer of authenticity that I thoroughly enjoy. So thanks again. This won't be the last time we talk. I'll have you back on as long as you'll come. I will absolutely love to have you back on.
It's been brilliant. Thank you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Absolutely no problem. Tonight, I will have Philip Chase on, talk about the Edan trilogy and some other fun stuff at 8 p.m. Eastern. So until then, guys, you have a wonderful day or night, and we'll see you then.
Thank you very much, and cheers for everyone tuning in.